You know, if you look in our mission statement, we talk about our talented faculty forging enduring personal relationships. It happens in the classroom, it happens outside the classroom, it happens on the field, happens on the ice, in the case of tonight's honoree. And I think about all of you who are here, including several of the guys who most recently won a hockey championship for Boys Latin School. Way to go, boys. Good way to send off Coach Maisel. And for those of you who might be a little bit longer in the tooth, who are part of that first hockey championship some, what is it, 35 or more years ago? That's almost a lifetime, Coach. One thing remains consistent, though. In Butch, we have someone who embodies our motto, embodies our mission, embodies our values, and knows that in the classroom and outside of it, it's about teaching life lessons. It's about building character. It's about shaping and forming boys into men, younger and older, gathered here tonight. So someday, when we build the hockey rink here on Lake Avenue, I have no doubt that it will bear Butch Maisel's name. And so not fully retired, but perhaps stepping away from the coaching box. Just know how grateful our school is for the influence that you had in forming generations of boys and men, Butch. Congratulations on a wonderful career.
Thanks, Chris. I'm now going to bring up the family. The next Chris is ready to speak. Chris Maisel is going to say some words. Here you go.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me without this? Yes? Okay, all right. I don't do well with mic. So anyway, obviously for everybody that knows me, I kind of have a unique situation, obviously, with Coach Maisel here, right? Grew up, obviously, as his son. I grew up as a rink rat, all around the different rinks in the state. Grew up as a manager of some sorts until I got into middle school, and then eventually was a player under him, was a captain with him and Coach U, then became an assistant coach, and then eventually the head coach. So I feel like I've kind of seen him and worked with him in almost every single facet. And coming here and thinking about today what I wanted to talk about, I kind of was really honestly having trouble where to kind of pinpoint and kind of make one kind of thesis about all this. And I decided to essentially just land on leadership, right? And what my dad has done and his leadership for this program. And I wrote down a couple notes I'd like to just highlight. The first is a good leader has vision, a vision for a program, for a team, for whatever it is, right? And his vision started many, many years ago. It started with a club. It started with a few people that were interested in hockey, his own passion, and that vision has gone to, where here we are today, right? And I've always wondered, especially when I was coaching, I'll never forget, we scored a big goal against Gilman, and I just remember the student section, and I remember one of the guys jumping up, and it's just this madhouse, right, of just an incredible moment. And I always wondered, did he ever envision it getting that good and that awesome, right? And I think he did, but at the end of the day, it takes a good leader that has a vision to where to take a program, and certainly you had that, Dad. Good leaders build cohesive and effective teams, right? If you look at some of the photos he's got and some of the cast of characters that he's had to work with as a coach, and many of us were probably a part of some of those teams, it takes a good leader to take an unbelievable, array of skills. We're talking some of these teams where you had people that just bought their first skates and put them into a league where there's, MIA, A-conference players, put them out on the ice and develop some type of team where they can work and actually compete and in many cases win. That's incredible, right? That's leadership right there. Good leadership creates, I think, what do you call it, an identity and a culture, right? For all of us who have been around BL, there's an amazing culture here at the school, but there's kind of also these little subcultures inside of each sport and each club, and the hockey culture that he's created, I think, is just one of those subcultures that is unique and unlike any other one here at the school. I know a lot of guys that went on to play club soccer, club lacrosse, and at the end of the day, a lot of them will look back and say, I really miss playing hockey at BL. It was just this subculture here that's just so unique and so different. And again, you created that, so thank you. Good leaders make everyone individually better. Again, a lot of different skill sets of ice hockey players that have come underneath his tutelage, and he has made them all better hockey players, while at the same time, like any good leader and any good coach, has made them, I think, a better person and a better citizen and just a better person here at the school. You know, if you've ever been under my father as a coach or a teacher, for sure, you know, personal responsibility is a big thing. You know, if you've ever been on, nothing makes him more mad than if you forget your sock or your mouth guard for a game, right? Because it is your personal responsibility to be in charge of that, right? And what made him even more mad, and I saw this as a kid and then later as a player, it's not so much that you forgot your mouth guard, but it's if you go out on the ice without your mouth guard, you're going to get a penalty. And if you get a penalty, who are you hurting? You're hurting your teammates, right? And it's those kind of things that he really, really hit on hard. And I think a lot of people, when you finally step back, and as this young class, I think, has just seen, right, that's you start to recognize he was hard on us sometimes, not because of just need to be a hard coach, but because he was trying to hit that team first, personal responsibility. Good leaders build up other leaders. If you look at the captains and how he developed the captains on the team, how he would pull students and players aside and not just teach them hockey, but say, hey, you want your teammates to follow you? You want to be a leader? He would teach those skills. He would teach the actual players to go out and how to be good leaders, and so that they could lead and take ownership of the team. And then if you look around the room and look at how many alums have come back that were players to teach and help the program, again, I think that's a testament to his ability to build up leaders around him. Good leaders are selfless. There are lots of things, again, growing up as a kid I saw, but I'd like to touch on one. My father, everybody, you see him, he goes to the practices, he goes to the things. We come back from a practice, we come back from a game, make sure all the kids go home. What does he do? He stays late, goes down, and he does everybody's laundry. He takes the kids' uniforms, their practice stuff, and he did laundry. How many years have we doing this? 30-some. Every day. And I was there, and I helped half the time. But he did laundry, right? Everybody's gone. And guess what he did the next morning? He woke up, he came to school, and the first thing he did is he went down to the locker room, took a shower, and he took the kids' laundry out, dried it, and put it in their lockers, or got it back to the kids, right? That's just one example, but just absolute selflessness that, again, I think all good leaders embody. Good leaders lead from the front. Hockey is one of the few sports here where every time we want to practice, we got to get on a bus. And in some seasons, we're driving to Ice World 3-4 times a week. Monday morning, 7 o'clock practices at Patterson. You know, here we are. It's 7:30. We're getting, yeah, they all laugh because you know it's Monday night. You haven't had dinner. You haven't done your homework. He's there every time. He comes home. We go home, have to eat and do homework. He comes home, and I saw him for years. What did he do? He went home, grade papers. He's got a responsibility to the students, right? Leading from the front. How many practices has Coach Maisel ever missed? Four, right? And I think it was when he had open heart surgery, and he broke his leg. But I can tell you, and my mom will probably attest to this, even after he broke his leg, he found a way to put on braces. T, where are you at, Mr. T? You probably helped rig something up. And he's out on the ice. He's always out with the team, never missing a beat, always out there. Just a couple more. Leaders are very committed, right? Again, my father, if he had frequent flyer miles for buses, he'd be able to travel around the world. And that's just for hockey, much less soccer and baseball. But my father has been committed to this program in the good times and the bad times. If you go through the yearbooks, you will see there will be years where the team's got 20, and 2 years later there's 5, right? And it didn't matter. It wasn't about winning a championship. It was about making a program and about giving opportunities for the guys that wanted to do something else, that wanted to play hockey, right? And because of that commitment, yeah, it has been a roller coaster. But we just won the championship again when just a few years ago we had like 5 people out playing hockey, right? And that is because of his commitment to everybody here. 2 last things. Good leaders recognize and reward everybody that's underneath of him. The other thing that I can tell you that my father did meticulously for years was he went over the stat book. And it wasn't so that he could get the accolades, or not even so much for the school, but it was for the players. Other than for getting a mouth guard, I can tell you something that made my father upset, which was if a manager screwed up the stats, okay? And again, it wasn't just because, it was because, you know, Bobby or whoever it was, he knows that he had 2 goals that night, not just 1, right? And it was because he wanted that guy to get the recognition he deserved. And when he went to those meetings that the MIA coaches go to at the end of the season, I can tell you when he went in there every year, guns blazing, here's the stats. This is why my guys should be on whatever the team is, whatever the all-star team is. And he went in there every year, loaded to bear, because he was not going to let anybody slip through the cracks that deserved recognition, right? And that's just another thing I think that gets overlooked. I'll just say this last, good leaders leave a legacy. And I think here today, that's kind of what we're recognizing, you know, in the Alumni Hall, just another championship, passing the baton on to everybody else, right? Good leaders leave a legacy and something to be proud of, and tradition, you know, pride and tradition we always talk about. So anyway, I think I'm about done. Sorry. A lot of years, as obviously my life has been pretty much enwrapped in this as well, but I couldn't think of, I think a better way to just recognize everything is just saying, I want to thank you, Dad, Coach, for your leadership and all those things I touched on that's going to clearly leave a lasting legacy. And as you've stepped on, obviously the baton's passed on to the new coach in great hands. But collectively, as alums and everybody a part of the BL community, I would challenge you all that do everything you can to make sure this legacy keeps going on. Because we will have, the hockey program will have dips and valleys, or valleys and peaks rather. And we're right at a peak right now. We're going to keep that going. But because of the uniqueness of the sport, there will be years where there's just not as much interest. So please, everybody, I think we owe it to Coach to keep that legacy going for the years to come. So thank you very much.
Chris, thanks so much. Appreciate it. And Chris just came back into town. He would tell you where he was, but he'd have to kill you, so he cannot do that. So, the man of the hour, Butch, say a few words.
Before I go into my remarks, Chris just reminded me of a story which I left off my list, because I have some good ones, guys. Be prepared. It's a mouth guard story, and for some reason I left it out. There was a year we were playing, and we were playing in Howard County. We had 1 goalie, and before the game, referee comes up and goes, Butch, I got to tell you, he can't play. He doesn't have the mouth guard. This year's team? Wasn't this year's team? And I said, is that a rule now? He goes, absolutely, I can't let him play. We have no other goalies. So I called the goalie over, and I said, I'm not going to mention his name. I said, I'll just make up one. Joe, we can't play. We're screwed. What are we going to do? I said, we got to find a mouth guard. We searched every bag. All you guys that have played hockey know the worst thing on an ice rink is between the boards and the bench. You know how gross it is. There's a mouthpiece down there, all gnarled up. So I said, Johnny, I can't make you do this. I'll get fired. But I'm just going to put it on the bench. And he goes, Coach, I got it. Give me a water bottle. He put it in his mouth. I almost threw up. And we won the game. But that's because he knew he had to do it for the team. Before I get going, I want to mention 2 names who can't be here. I knew I was going to do this. Charlie Wilson and Henry Luppy. Two of our players that were really involved in the program and were killed violently and suddenly not long after they graduated. So I had to mention that. Thank you. As Chris said, he stole a lot of my thunder. Hockey is a special experience. I played every sport in high school, college, semi-pro, every team you can imagine. But the bond of a hockey team is something I can't get over. It's always there, as attributed to some of you guys being here. I got some special thank yous tonight. One is Rye Chapman. Some of you remember Mr. Chapman. and Tony Lilly, who when I came to Boys Latin about 100 years ago, they had a hockey club. And when I got here, I went, hockey? Oh man, this is the right school for me. And I think we skated twice a week down at the old Northwest ice rink, and it was great. And after about the first year, I said, we should try to get a team. I think we got enough guys, but there's no other teams in the state. So I checked it out. Gilman had a club too. Now I'm really drooling because I want to beat Gilman. So Tony Lilly and I said, let's get a team. Tony helped. Tony was the one that created that first real cool uniform over there. And we played Gilman in the first high school hockey game in the modern era. Nobody had played high school hockey, I don't think, in this state since the old Carlin's ice rink burned down, I think, in the 40s or 50s or some long time ago. So we were the first ones on the block. And I will say we won, and I got to play. And I love beating Gilman. So that's when that started. A special thanks goes out to Mr. Gelson in the back. Mr. Gelson, maybe begrudgingly, but he allowed me to fulfill this dream of starting a hockey team when nobody else had one. And Mr. Gelson deserves a lot of credit. I consider my family part of the hockey program, and I really call it like the BL franchise, and each one has its different job. My wife, Janet, where are you hiding, Janet? Oh, she's hiding. Janet's the general manager of the club. If you imagine me being away all these nights and days, I mean, I come home at 8 or 9 o'clock sometimes, and she was able to manage the house, the 3 children, now the 3 grandchildren this past couple years, and several dogs. And I don't know how she's balanced all that and still managed to come to some games. And I told her many times, don't come, you've got too much on your plate, just stay home, and she'd show up at the rink. My daughter, Claire, where are you hiding? Claire is like a manager, I don't know, she actually, she's shaking her head. Claire actually did the clock a couple games, and she videotaped some games for us. When she was in college, she got one of her roommates, and they came out and videoed, and it's great hearing their comments. That's pretty good. But she actually knew what she was doing. My godson, Tim, was the manager for the team for a long time. He did stats, he did laundry, he did the clock, he did all sorts of things. And then finally, Chris, who's my player coach, even when he was little, we critiqued the game every day in the car. And Chris was obviously a player, an assistant coach, and a head coach. He's also my minister of propaganda, as Gene Ubriaco used to call me. Chris was the one that designed some of those cool uniforms. They were his designs. He's the first coach to come out with the Laker actually holding an athletic device. Now everybody does it. He says he should get some kind of royalty for that. And helped design logos. He designed this patch this year that we gave everybody on the varsity for winning the championship. A real cool T-shirt, which you should see. It says, "Tradition never graduates." He's always thinking outside the bun. And I remember one time when he was in, I guess he was in the Sinai for his year deployment over there. He had other things to think about. I was emailing him how the hockey team was doing. And he'd send me comments to pass along with the team. And that meant a lot to those guys, I can tell you that. Fellow coaches, Danny Miller, Gus Karkey, Jim Sandusky, Gene Ubriaco, Coach Schuster, Derek Radeball, Mark Moxley, they're both here tonight. As I said this year, we got the band back together. And then finally, Coach V, who I'm going to talk about in a minute. Trainers, Jimmy Talbert. Where's Jimmy? There he is. Great trainer, patched me up numerous times. His brother Keith actually was like the hockey trainer for a couple of years. Chris Curry, Shelley Pruitt. Parents, I see many of you here. We couldn't do that if you couldn't get your kids here and come to the games and support us. Miss who? Who am I going to say now? Charisse. Miss Charisse, our Boys Latin official ice hockey bus driver, who actually gave these kids Christmas presents. She tried to get every one of our practices and games. She's really a Laker. And most important of all the players that are here and not here tonight, obviously, we couldn't do it without you guys. Now I have a couple quick stats and highlights. I said hockey is like a brotherhood. Chris and I were picking our brains the other night. We have 12 sets of brothers that played hockey at Boys Latin, and I hope I didn't miss any. I almost forgot the Waybergs. Coach V said, don't forget. No, oh my gosh. The Bergers, the Lubkes, the Schusters, the Lewandowskis, the Sheevies, the Cokes, the Walkers, the Halls, the Pieces, the Fords, the Shanes, and the Waybergs. I saved you for last. Memorable quotes. This is one of my good ones. One of my favorite quotes, and some of you have heard this was from one of my assistant coaches, Gus Karkey. We were playing a game against St. Joe on a Saturday, and everybody said they were going to make it, and most of the team didn't show up. We had 7 players against St. Joe. And it's tough, but our guys are gutting it out. And Coach Karkey had one of my greatest quotes. He said, "That's what trash cans are made for." His son, Doug, who I think was a freshman, had the stomach flu. You get where this is going? And he's over on the side of the bench, and I'm going, "Doug, man, you don't have to do this. You can't play." And his father goes, "That's what trash cans are made for. Wipe your mouth off and get in the game." And he looked at me and goes, "Yes, Coach, I'm all in." BL hockey. Team comes first. My fun quote, and I'm trying to think who might remember this. Cooper, I think you were on this team. The Yucatan League. Yucatan's in Mexico. They don't play hockey. We were playing Spalding one year when we didn't have enough guys to play in a league, and Spalding's an A-conference team, and we're winning 2-0, and they're getting chippy. And one of our guys banged a guy in front of the boards, and he's right here in front of me, and he looks at one of my players and says something snarky, and I didn't like it. And he said, "I'm a club player." I said, "You play in that Yucatan League in Mexico, don't you?" He tried to jump the boards and punch me, and 2 of my players got in there, and I was like, "Yeah, go back to the Yucatan and play hockey." Didn't like that. Then here's one, keep shooting them high. We had a guy named Pat Grimsley who went on to play professional hockey in the Western Canadian League. He was a legitimate pro hockey player. And then some things happened, he couldn't play anymore, but we would warm up. This guy had one of the hardest shots I've ever seen. And warm up one day, hit one high, and it broke out the exit sign at the Northwest Ice Rink. Now, I'm watching the other team, and they're going, "Oh." I was like, "Pat, in warm-ups, you shoot everything high." And he'd do it every game. I had the rink people complaining. I was like, "Hey, I can't help it. He's just a good player." And it worked. Shoot him high. I think this one is attributed to Derek. We were playing Gilman, one of our favorite teams, and Derek just KO'd a guy, legal hit. I'm not the man, with one cheap shot, you'll see in a minute. And Derek, I think, said, "I think I killed him." He just broke his collarbone. It was nothing serious. Legal hit. And my favorite quote of all times, when things get chippy and somebody takes liberty at one of our guys, I don't want us to retaliate. It's not good for anybody. My quote is, don't get mad, don't do something stupid, score more goals. And that's always been my motto. I got yelled at by a parent from another school, and I said, "Well, I get coached to win, and when you take liberties in my players, I'm going to score more goals. It's your choice." So, checks, here we go. Blair Munesis, if you played with Blair, versus Bowie Club Team. We're playing at Bowie, and it's a chippy organization in Bowie. And we're winning by a lot, and I had one of my weakest players on the ice, could hardly skate, as Chris was talking about, and one of their goons crushed him from behind. It was heinous. Blair Munesis, whose nickname was Sub-Zero, Blair Munesis just comes right over to the guy and goes, boom, knocks him down. He goes flying. As he turns, one of the Bowie players is now trying to retaliate. So he sees him coming, he goes, "Okay," boom, knocks him down. And then he just went and walked over, sat down on the bench, took a drink in the penalty box. That's the only cheap shot penalty, but you know what? That was called for. How many guys ever played with Pat McDermott? Anybody here? So here's my idea about checking. Pat McDermott versus everybody. He hit anything that moved in another uniform. He had such a reputation, and it used to get me upset. Referees would come over before the game and say, "Hey, number 13, I'm watching him, and he better not." And I was like, "Hey, just ref the game. You're already starting out with an attitude." So he did hit everybody. J.P. Barbeau, who played with J.P. His hit in the Gilman game one year, in front of the Gilman bench, the guy had a loose puck going full speed, and he bobbled it. That was a mistake. JP had one of the hardest, cleanest hits I've ever seen. Every once in a while, I play these tapes back, And that's one I play back. Oh, I gotta see that again. It's unbelievable. Now, here comes a fun one. Drew Peace versus Severn, and Chris Maisel versus St. Paul's. They have something in common. They each knocked their opponent through the plexiglass. They hit illegal hits, hit them so hard they went crashing in the glass and the glass broke. Drew, I gave you a piece of one, and I gave Chris one. We have it hanging as a Christmas ornament, and I have a photo of him hitting the guy. It's on our Christmas tree. Trey Shane. Trey Shane, pound for pound, was the hardest hitter I've ever seen. He played defense, and he hit anybody that tried to get near his blue line, offense or defense. He was most known for his checks on the offensive blue line. Guys would try to kill him, and he just knew they were coming. And he'd put his head down and step up and go, call wham. And I've got some of those on tape. And the last one I'll mention, some of you guys know, Derek Poole. Derek Poole was the biggest, baddest hockey player, and I played against him in a men's league, I've ever seen. And he's most noted for checking two of our assistant coaches. I'll just leave that at that. And I called them both clean hits, and they didn't like it. Not my fault. A couple other quick things. Plays. Pat Grimsley's slap shots. Brian Cook was one of our all-time leading scorers for a long time. He was as slippery as an eel. I've never seen a guy who could just dart in and out. Gene Ubriaco's slap shot from outside the blue line in the semifinals of our state championship game. It's overtime. We're down a man. Brett Stump's in the penalty box. There's not a surprise. And we won the face-off. Gene took 2 steps, hit a slap shot right in the goal. Game over. It's like, we just won. Incredible moment. Brian Lichtenauer, who scored the game-winning goal against St. Paul's in a championship under Jim Sandusky. Danny Goods, 3 goals versus St. Paul's in a championship game. I have to say, Chris Maisel's water bottle shot in that game, as a father and a coach. Guy hit him with an elbow, knocked him down. He got up, hit another guy, knocked him down. And then somehow we got the puck, and Henry Lupke passed him the puck. And Chris put it right under the bar. The water bottle went flying. I watched that one a lot, too. Well, here's a good one. This year's championship game, obviously, the celebration was awesome to see. And any one of Nick Chan's 137 goals, yep, that's what I said, in 3 years. But probably the most memorable is the first Michigan goal he scored. If you don't know what that is, he was behind the Gilman net, picked it up on a stick like a lacrosse player, flipped it over the guy's shoulder. And the coolest thing was, I thought, oh man, Gilman's not going to like that. The Gilman bench stood up and applauded. Some of them stuck their hand out. And you did it one this year too, didn't you? Almost. Not good enough. Michael Ludwig's goal versus Calvert Hall. Another year where we didn't have enough players. We were playing Calvert Hall, an A-conference team, and we were winning until about 10 seconds left, and we had a defenseman who I'm not sure, I think I remember who it was, hold the puck. All he could do is hold the puck. He skates around our net and loses it, and they score. I'd talk about me being upset. And all you had to do was dump it. So we go up to the face-off dot. Ludwig's going to face off. Calvert Hall pulls their goalie. And I go, Luddy. He kicks it out with a skate, crosses the red line, puts it in the empty net, and we win. The Calvert Hall parents went crazy. And one of the greatest quotes, the coach said, I know it was desperate, but I wanted to beat boys Latin at least once in my career. They'd never beaten us. Way to go, Luddy. And is Matt Haas here? Where's Matt? There he is. I was hoping that Gene Ubriaco was here for this. Derek, you know what I'm going to do. Every time I talk about Gene and mention you, he goes, Haasian saves. There would be a puck down here, Matt would catch it, and he'd always flash his leather and show that puck to the opposing team. So I can always see Matt showing his leather. And the acrobatics of Max Carrion, Danny Murphy, Joey Celentano. I think Celentano made 60 saves in a game one time. Fights, almost done. We've had 2 fights in boys Latin history. One was a night when we first started playing, I think ABC or one of the networks said, we want to film a high school hockey game. I remember calling the team in. I said, guys, we can't have any fights. We can't do anything stupid. It's going to be on TV. Please. That's what I allow the locker room. I'm begging them. During the course of the game, a guy from St. Joe, surprisingly, trips Brett, and they talk trash to us that whole season. And he's got Brett on his back, and he's punching him. And I'm like, oh. The referees did not step in, so I looked over the bench, and I went to Brett and went, he flipped the guy, one punch, boom, done. Now, that, in the game, that's a suspension and all that. I talked to the head of the officials. I said, your officials had no control. I got it on tape. They were letting my player get beaten up, and they went, you're right, no penalty. And TV had just left before that. Thank you. And the last one, the infamous middle school brawl. My son relayed this to me. When we started a middle school program years ago, that was our JV. We had a lot of guys, and we only lost a couple games, if any. We beat Loyola every year, and they had a goalie who was a loudmouth and a real show-off. He'd get the puck, and he'd try to skate up the ice. Well, Chris, as maybe a 5th or 6th grader, had enough of that, and the guy started skating, and Chris just crushed him. The guy gets up, takes off his blocker and glove, and starts pounding on him on his back as he's on the ice, hitting him in the head. Trey Shane, who was the big older brother, came out of nowhere and just pummeled him. So at the end of the game, we had like 4 players kicked out, but sticking up for your teammates. And my last thing are most memorable games. The state championship game in 1988. A state championship for boys Latin. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre, Drew, all you guys, Chris, when we beat St. Paul's, 6-1 or 6-2. That was another one where they were, and we just took them to task in that game. So I made my little propaganda things and passed around school and called it the St. Valentine's Day Massacre because it was on Valentine's Day. And the greatest game ever played, and Bobby, you were in that game. You remember what game this was? There it is. See? We were playing 7. We were out of the playoffs, and we were undermanned. That team, all they had to do was beat lowly boys Latin, or maybe even tie us, and they were going to get in the playoffs. Their best player was Craig Laughlin's son, who played for the Caps and is their announcer now. He was full of himself. Before the game, they were shooting pucks in our locker room to intimidate us. I didn't like that. And I think in the opening faceoff, Bobby Grebe comes down the right wing and buries a slap shot. Goal. They went on to score the next 4 goals, I think, and they're killing us. And then the Lakers came back. And we scored, I think, the next 5 goals through sheer determination. The referee came up to me when the game was over and said, I've never seen a team sacrifice themselves so much to score a goal. Guys knew they were going to get hit and get crushed into the boards, dive for pucks. He said, you guys should be complimented for that. And we held on to win that game, and that was one of the most satisfying games I've ever coached. What I'd like to do now, I'm just about done. I'd like anybody that was on this year's championship team to come up. Drew, when you bring up what you brought in. This has been missing since the championship game, I will add that. So all the players come up here in front with me. Coach V, come on up. So I will officially now give this to Mr. Post, who give this then to Mr. Thomas. So this is now back on campus. It's nice to have it back. So for all you guys that have played and parents, get to know some of these guys. They're not all seniors. Some of these guys are coming back. You'd be proud of the way they played this year, and really every year since they've been around here. Really a lot to be thankful for. And the last thing I want to do is introduce Coach V. Where is he? He's hiding. The reason I can stand here today, because I'm confident. He was named the Coach of the Year. And you're going to hang out for a little bit, get to know Coach V. Maybe you can help out like Coach Moxley and Coach Radeball did. We can always use help in practices and some games. So I don't intend to go on the bus rides anymore to practices or games. I will do the laundry. I will make sure the locker room's neat. And I'm going to scout games. And I will probably just skate once a week to keep the legs going so I can play in the alumni game. I know some other guys are going to play this year. So anyway, get to know some of these guys. Once again, thanks to everybody for coming. Really appreciate it.